Hi, I'm Eliot, the IELTS expert at Magoosh, and in this lesson we're going to be thinking about IELTS Writing Task 1 prompts where you have to write about pie charts. This is one kind of prompt that can be a little bit tricky, although if you get some tips and think through how to respond to this type of question, you can really master it and do well on the exam. So let's take a look at these tips and then think about how to apply them with a sample essay question that includes a pie chart. Let's take a look. Here's an example of a Task 1 prompt with 2 pie charts. Okay, now remember, on the actual IELTS exam, you might have a mixture of different kinds of visuals. You might have a bar chart with a pie chart, or you might have a table with a pie chart, for example. In this video, we're going to look at 2 pie charts since we're focusing on how to analyze that type of visual for your Task 1 prompts. Okay, so let's take a look at this sample question very quickly. We'll look at some tips about how to respond to pie chart questions, and then we'll look at a sample response to this particular prompt we're going to look at in just a moment. Okay, starting at the top. The charts below give information about the television and internet habits of a group of high school age students in the United Kingdom. Okay, so we've got this group of students. They're all at the same school in the United Kingdom. Okay, it's called the Regis Finishing College. Okay, and we're looking at TV habits, and we're going to look at favorite types of TV shows and the way that they use the internet based on responses they provided in some kind of survey. Okay, so these pie charts are what you would have to respond to for the sample prompt we're going to look at in a moment. Let's think first, though, about how to respond. What do you need to know about these pie charts and how to respond to them to do really well on your Task 1 questions that include this type of visual? Okay, let's take a look. All right, first, so your most important job on any Task 1 response is to describe the visuals accurately and efficiently. Okay, that's the way you're going to score the best with any type of visual they give you. But for pie charts, well, what does that mean? Well, a pie chart shows proportions of things. Okay, it's a basic place to start as you're examining a pie chart for your Task 1 response is to determine exactly what the proportions mean in the charts you're looking at. In other words, you're going to need to label the different percentages that you see on the pie chart and make sure you understand exactly what they stand for. Okay, in a moment we're going to look at that, where what we're looking at in one pie chart are preferences, okay, favorite TV shows. On the other side, we're looking at behaviors, habits. Okay, we'll look at that closely in a moment. Just keeping that in mind here as we look at our initial list of tips for pie charts. Secondly, okay, so you'll want to find shared or related features on the visuals you're analyzing. Okay, this is something that's really basic to how you're supposed to respond to your Task 1 prompts, no matter what the visuals are. Okay, so as we see when we'll look at the sample pie charts in this lesson, it can help you to create sort of chunks or groups out of some of the information on the pie charts. Okay, pulling things together, consolidating and making categories out of particular information that you see. Okay, so again, we're going to look at this in just a moment, try to look at our sample prompt and apply this tip in just a second to show you what we're talking about. Last tip here before we look at the prompt again is to paraphrase key terms. So looking at your pie charts, looking at the descriptions at the top of the pie chart, trying to paraphrase language you see there, trying to boost your vocabulary and grammar scores by showing how much range you have, how many words you can use to describe what's presented to you in the prompt itself. Okay, again, we're going to apply this in just a moment and look at how to do this with our 2 pie charts. So let's start with our first suggestion. What do the proportions mean? Well, to begin, we have 2 similar but slightly different concepts going on in both pie charts. We discussed this briefly just a moment ago. As we noted, the first one focuses on favorites, the favorite types of TV shows, what students report they like to watch the most. Okay, so this has nothing really to do with how much time students spend watching these shows or how frequently they watch them. We might guess that students like, that spend a lot of time watching their favorite kinds of shows. But maybe they don't. Maybe they're too busy studying and they don't have time to watch even their favorite kinds of shows. All right, just keeping it clear what the percentages mean here. This 35% does not mean that students spend a lot more time watching these kinds of shows. It simply means that 34.5% said that dramas are their favorite type of TV program. Okay, so what do the proportions mean? In the first pie chart, we're talking about proportion of people who say that this is their favorite kind of program. Okay, the second pie chart is very different. The most common type of internet activity in the second chart. So this is much more about habits. The chart represents how common each activity is. That has more to do with how much students use the internet for these activities than it is how much they like to do so, right? Whereas the chart on the left is about things that students like and it's their favorite things to do. Well, we could maybe guess, some of these entertainment purposes, social media, those are things students enjoy doing, I suppose. But regardless of that, what we're looking at on the right is how commonly students use the internet for these different categories of web use. Okay, so two different purposes for the proportions, the information that we see in both pie charts. All right, now let's move on to our second tip. So what are the shared or related variables between the visuals? One potentially useful division we could make on these charts would be to separate out the activities and shows that are purely for entertainment or for fun. So specifically, the idea here is that shows like comedy and celebrity gossip may have something in common with internet activities in the entertainment or social media categories, for example. These combinations could help you to make comparisons and describe the information on the visuals efficiently. Okay, so looking through all of this data, maybe a good division there is carving out what's for work or what's for schoolwork, what's about learning something or something that may be part of what they need to do for school anyway, and what is purely for entertainment or fun. Okay, that could be a division. And in fact, when we look at our sample essay towards the end of the lesson, that's a categorization we're going to use to divide the information here. All right, so consolidating, categorizing things in order to report about it in an efficient way. All right, finally then, thinking about paraphrases, okay? Thinking about what we can take from the pie charts, from the information provided to us, and then show off that we can find synonyms or find paraphrases for those terms in our description of what we see. Okay, so what could we do on our sample pie charts here? Well, this one's pretty straightforward, I think, with this sample question. Okay, a good strategy with these charts would be to use different forms of the words in the labels whenever possible. Okay, so comedies, all right, comedies could be comedic performances or comedic programs. Animation could be animated shows, or another word for animation is cartoons. Okay, that could be another possible paraphrase for those words. Okay. Similarly, on the second chart, you could write emailing and studying as internet-related activities. Okay. So rather than just relying on the same form that we see on the pie chart itself, use a different grammatical form. That's a form of paraphrasing that is great for your task 1 responses, changing around the form of a word wherever possible. Okay, again, the point is to show off your vocabulary, your grammatical knowledge by taking some of these words, changing them around, using them in different ways in your response. Okay, but we still haven't analyzed the charts yet. Okay, we've just looked at thinking through how to report about what's there and what information is included on our charts. Now we got to think about, okay, what information would you pull out of those charts and report about as the most important, significant data in your response? Okay, so let's think about that. So when you're selecting the most important data, one thing you should do is absolutely. Analyze the highest and lowest proportion of things. Okay, so sometimes you can consolidate maybe the two highest categories, the two lowest categories. Maybe they share something in common. Maybe it only makes sense to highlight the most or the highest proportion of something, the lowest proportion of something, some category. You have to look at the data and whether or not it can be consolidated in some logical way. But one thing you should do on all pie charts is to mention what is the highest and lowest proportion of whatever category you're looking at, okay? And as I noted just a second ago, if possible, try to categorize things. You can categorize things across your two visuals or within your visuals themselves, okay? And actually, in our sample response, you're going to see examples of both of those things. How we create categories within one pie chart. We pull two similar categories together and consolidate them, but we also look across charts as well. Okay, again, anything you can do to categorize things allows you to report about that information more efficiently. Okay, so that's something we'll look at in our sample response. Okay, so first though, let's look about analyzing the highest and lowest proportions of things. Well, as we look at our sample question, which proportions stand out most to you? Clearly, the drama and comedy categories stand out as favorites in the first chart, right? The educational shows and talk shows being the least popular on this first chart here. On the second chart, studying and social media make up the most common internet activities, with email and news as the least common. Okay, these are things you'd want to report about in your response, okay? Now, can we categorize this information in any particular way? Well, at the beginning of the lesson, we talked about how the category of fun and entertainment seems to apply to a number of the shows and activities listed on our two charts, okay? In fact, it's interesting to note how many of the TV shows could be described as fun or entertainment. And then also note that the second and third top categories on the internet chart are also fun related, with social media and entertainment comprising about 45% of all internet activities when you add those two categories together. Organizing the information this way gives us a way to categorize all of it as we write about it, okay, to organize our thoughts in some coherent way. And that can help you with that scoring category, coherence and cohesion, which is looking at how clearly you can organize this information, okay? So let's take a look at how all of this comes together in a sample response. In a first paragraph about these two pie charts, we would simply want to describe them very generally, as we talked about at the beginning of this lesson, just noting the main features that exist on these two pie charts. So we could start this way. The two pie charts are based on survey responses from teens at one school in the United Kingdom. The teens were surveyed about their TV and internet habits and content preferences. Okay, so habits and preferences. We're paraphrasing some of the information that we have on our charts, right? Habits relates to these activities, and preferences relates to favorites, okay? What you like is your preference, okay? There's some other paraphrases you can note in there as well. Okay, so just taking the information in this first paragraph, describing the main purpose, the main features that we see in our two charts here. Let's continue. In some ways, students' internet and TV preferences overlap. Shows and activities that are mainly focused on entertainment are popular in either case. However, while using the internet for educational purposes is the most common activity listed, education and news-related TV program are the least popular types of viewing content. All right, here we're providing a kind of overview, noting that there are these commonalities between the two pie charts, especially surrounding the entertainment or the fun-related activities, the things that students are watching just purely for fun. Okay, then we note one of the main contrasts between the two in our overview here. Noting that the internet is commonly used for educational purposes, okay, education and news, while TV, not so much, okay? TV is much more about fun and entertainment. And that's a theme we can continue as we try to talk in detail about the numbers presented on the pie charts, okay? So in a paragraph 3 here, we could say, fun is especially dominant in these teens' TV habits, okay? So taking that idea that TV is about fun, okay, and expanding it, providing details about it. This fun idea is our organizing principle for this whole paragraph, basically. Between animation, the favorite at 3.8%, talk shows 4.6%, celebrity gossip 9.2%, and comedy 25.3%, and drama 34.5%, nearly 90% of what students prefer on TV is primarily for fun. There's our category that helped us to organize all of this information into a coherent package that's where all the ideas are linked together nicely. Comparing now, in comparison, less than 13% of students count news or educational shows as their favorite. Okay, so this idea of fun-related TV content isn't a key idea for one of our body paragraphs here, but we're going to continue on and analyze the other chart now. Similarly, internet is also mostly about fun for students. About 35% of students say that either email or social media is their most common activity. And about 21% of students most commonly use the web for entertainment. That's a 56% fun rate, okay, back to this idea of fun, compared to the smaller number of students who say they use the internet primarily for study or news. Still, education and news clearly make a stronger showing online compared to the TV screen. Okay, so interesting analysis here where we're taking this category of fun, we're using it to lump together a number of these internet activities to say, okay, well, actually the internet is also used primarily for entertainment, even though it is much more common to use the internet for education and study, or at least students say that that's what they most commonly do on the internet compared to TV, where okay, these are not their favorite kinds of shows, okay? That's the comparison we're trying to keep straight, is that where at least on the TV side, students are saying, these serious programs, news and educational programs are not their favorites. Okay, so using that categorization in order to present data in a very coherent way. Again, our goal, we could easily fall in the trap with all these numbers that we have here, all these different categories. It might be an easy trap to fall into to simply start listing a bunch of categories and numbers in your response, okay? That would pull your score down significantly compared to if you can find ways to categorize the information like we did in this sample response for these pie charts related to TV and internet activities. So returning to our tips, so far we've discussed what information we need to report in pie chart questions, and we talked about how to kind of organize the information in the best way possible, trying to consolidate things and categorize things in particular. Okay, but as with all Task 1 prompts, something I say on every Task 1 video I make is that vocabulary is key. And you have to have in order to do all of these things, you have to have the vocabulary to pull it off. So study useful vocabulary and phrases for these prompt types. If you click on the link below this lesson, it's going to take you to a page where we've provided some vocabulary resources for you. There are also sample Task 1 questions there, links to those questions. You can find another pie chart question there to practice the concepts we studied in this lesson, and you'll see a sample response for that pie chart question in order to compare to your own. Okay, so before we finish this lesson, I'm going to put the full essay response for the question we analyzed in this video up on the screen. You could pause your video, take a look at that closely, read it through from beginning to end, and then hit play again because we'll finish out the lesson after that. Okay, so here is the full sample response for our pie chart question. All right, I hope you liked the video. If you want more IELTS writing tips and strategies, check out these videos on the left, and I'll see you in the next lesson.